Alex walked slowly through the dense forest, the sound of his boots crunching on the dry leaves echoing in the quiet morning. The sun was just starting to rise, casting a soft light over the landscape. He had been traveling for hours looking for a place to gather supplies when he spotted something unusual. A figure in the distance caught his eye, someone who didn't belong in this remote corner of the planet. As he approached, he saw it was a woman, but she wasn't human. Her skin had a pale blue tint, and her hair shimmered like strands of silver. She was crouching on the ground, holding a small child in her arms. The woman looked exhausted, her face dirty and bruised, but it was the way she held her child, protective and desperate, that stopped Alex in his tracks. The woman noticed him, her wide eyes meeting his. She seemed terrified but also exhausted, as if she had been running for days. Alex, though cautious, couldn't ignore the situation. He slowly approached, making sure not to startle her. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice gentle, though his hand hovered near the small blaster he kept at his side. The woman didn't answer at first. Instead, she glanced at the child in her arms, a girl, no older than 5 or 6. Her skin was darker than the woman's, but her eyes had the same terrified look. The girl's lips trembled, and Alex noticed how thin she looked, her ribs visible through her torn clothes. "Please," the woman finally said, her voice hoarse. "Just feed her. She hasn't eaten in days." Her voice cracked as she spoke, and Alex could hear the desperation in her words. He looked at the child, who was barely able to keep her eyes open. The sight of the girl's condition made Alex's heart ache. He didn't hesitate. He nodded and took a few steps closer. "I have some food," he said, reaching into his pack. "She needs to eat." The woman watched him closely, still wary, but her eyes softened. "I'll stay out of your way," she promised, almost like a whisper. "I'll keep quiet. I'll stay in your bed if you let me. I just need her to survive." Alex froze for a moment, unsure what she meant by staying in his bed. But her words, filled with pain and pleading, pushed the question aside. He had heard stories about refugees and the struggles they faced, but he had never seen anyone so desperate. He took out a small ration pack from his bag and handed it to her. The woman took it without hesitation and broke it open, feeding the girl first. The child didn't fight, didn't ask questions. She just ate, barely aware of her surroundings. Alex watched them for a moment, his heart heavy with sympathy. The woman's gaze met his, and he saw something in her eyes, something dark and painful, like a person who had been through too much to ever trust anyone again. "Thank you," the woman whispered, once the girl had eaten enough. "We won't cause any trouble. We'll stay in the corner of your cabin. I just need you to let us stay for a while." Alex hesitated for a moment. He was a stranger on this planet, too. He had no reason to trust her, but something about her situation moved him. He couldn't turn his back on them. Not now. "You can come with me," Alex said finally. "I have a cabin nearby. It's not much, but it's safe." The woman's eyes filled with relief, and for the first time she smiled. It was faint, but it was enough for Alex to see that it wasn't a smile of joy. It was a smile of survival. She was thankful, but she wasn't celebrating. She had been through too much for that. Alex led them to his cabin, a small, humble structure, built into the side of the forest. It wasn't much, just a bed, a small kitchen, and a table. But it was warm and safe, a refuge from the cold winds that howled through the planet's rough terrain. Once inside, the woman placed the girl on the small bed and covered her with the blanket. The child was already asleep, her breathing slow and steady. The woman sat by the bed, her eyes never leaving her daughter. She still seemed on edge, but Alex could see the exhaustion in her posture, the weight of the world on her shoulders. "I'll cook something for you," Alex offered. "It's not much, but I have enough to last a while." She nodded but didn't speak. Alex went to the kitchen area, pulling out another ration pack and some dried vegetables he had stored. As he worked, he couldn't help but think about the woman's strange request, staying in his bed. She hadn't explained it, and he wasn't sure if it was a cultural difference or something more. He didn't press the issue for now. They were both tired, and it seemed like the woman needed time to recover, to figure out what to do next. He'd give her that space. The meal was simple, but it filled them both. After they ate, the woman finally spoke again. Her voice was quieter than before, almost like she was afraid to break the silence. "Thank you," she said softly. "I'll stay out of your way. I just need to keep her safe. I don't know where else to go." Alex looked at her, the weight of her words sinking in. He didn't know her story, but he could see the fear in her eyes. Whatever had happened to her, whatever she was running from, it was clear that it wasn't over. And now it seemed Alex had become part of her journey. "You can stay as long as you need," he said, trying to reassure her. "But I need to know more. What happened? Why are you running?" The woman flinched at his words but didn't answer right away. She looked at her daughter, who was still asleep, then back at Alex. "Not yet," she said, her voice trembling. "Not yet." Alex didn't push her any further. For now, it was enough that she had accepted his help, but he knew this was just the beginning, and there was much more to come. Alex woke early the next morning as the first light of dawn pierced through the small cracks in the cabin's wooden walls. The air outside was crisp and cold, but inside, it felt warm enough to sleep. The small fire in the corner crackled quietly, a reminder of the simple comforts he had come to appreciate after weeks of traveling alone. He stretched and stood, quietly making his way to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. As he reached for the ration packs, he glanced over at the small bed where the alien woman, Yara, and her daughter, Ilara, slept. Yara lay on her side, her back to him, while Ilara curled up beside her, still deep in sleep. It had been a long, exhausting night. Alex didn't know much about the alien woman or her daughter, but he knew that they had been through a lot. Yara's request for shelter was simple, almost too simple, considering the desperation he had seen in her eyes. She wanted to stay quiet, to remain out of his way. In exchange, she offered to cook, to keep his cabin in order, and even to stay in his bed if it would help them remain unnoticed. Alex didn't fully understand why she needed to stay in his bed, but he wasn't about to press her. She was a stranger to him, but the circumstances didn't leave much room for questioning. He had made a silent agreement to help them, and he intended to honor that. As he prepared a meal for them, he could feel a growing sense of unease. He wasn't used to sharing his space with anyone, let alone someone who was so different from him. But there was something about Yara's quiet determination that made him trust her, even if he didn't fully understand her reasons. By the time breakfast was ready, Yara had awoken. She sat up on the bed, her eyes tired but alert. She didn't speak right away, but when she looked at him, her gaze was calm and steady. "Good morning," Alex said softly, setting the food down on the small table. "I've made some breakfast." "You should eat," Yara nodded, her lips tight. She stood slowly, stretching as if her muscles were sore from days of travel. She didn't look at him directly as she moved to the table, her movements careful, as though she didn't want to draw attention to herself. Ilara stirred, but the little girl stayed asleep, her tiny hands clutching the edge of the blanket. Yara glanced at her daughter, her eyes filled with a quiet sadness, before she sat down at the table and began to eat. Alex joined her, but the silence between them was thick. He could tell Yara was still holding back, not fully trusting him or the situation. He understood. She was a stranger, and she had her reasons for staying distant. But Alex couldn't help but feel a tug at his heart every time he saw her look at her daughter. There was so much pain in her eyes, so much history, that she wasn't willing to share. After breakfast, Alex went outside to gather more firewood. He needed to keep the fire going, especially as the temperature outside dropped. The cold was biting, even for someone used to the harsh conditions of this planet. Yara watched him as he worked, but she didn't speak. She stayed inside, cleaning. The small cabin, her movements efficient and quiet. Alex found it strange how quickly she settled into the routine, as if she had done this 1,000 times before. There was something in the way she moved, in the way she looked after her daughter, that told Alex she had known hardship for much of her life. By midday, Yara had finished cleaning the cabin. She didn't ask for anything. She didn't need to. She had already made it clear that she didn't want to be a burden. Alex, though, couldn't help but feel a little guilty. She was doing everything in her power to keep her distance, to make sure that he didn't feel like he owed her anything. But to him, it didn't feel right. They were both in this together, whether she liked it or not. Later in the afternoon, Alex decided to get to know Yara better. He had to know more about her, about what had led her to this planet and why she was so guarded. But he didn't want to press her. He didn't want to make her uncomfortable. "Yara," he began, his voice gentle. "I know you don't want to talk about it, but I need to know what's going on. What happened to you? Why are you running?" Yara didn't look at him right away. She stared at the ground, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of the blanket. The silence stretched on, and Alex felt his heart rate quicken. He knew she was struggling with something, but he wasn't sure what. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely, above a whisper. "I'm not running," she said. "I'm hiding. Hiding from the ones who want to take everything from me. From us." Alex didn't say anything. He didn't know how to respond. He could see the fear in her eyes, the weight of the words she had just spoken. She wasn't just hiding from enemies. She was running from something much deeper, something that had been haunting her for a long time. "They'll find me," she continued, her voice tight with emotion. "They always do. They have ways of tracking us, of making sure we don't escape." Alex's heart ached for her. He didn't know what kind of enemies she had, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to let them take her or her daughter. Not while they were under his roof. "I won't let them find you," Alex said, his voice firm. "You're safe here, as long as you need." Yara looked up at him then, her eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and fear. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll stay out of your way, I promise." Alex nodded. "It's not about staying out of the way. It's about being safe, you and your daughter." For the first time, Yara smiled. It was a small, uncertain smile, but it was enough to tell Alex that she didn't feel entirely alone anymore. Days passed, and life in the small cabin settled into a strange rhythm. Alex went out each morning to gather firewood and hunt for supplies. Yara stayed behind, tending to Alara and cooking the meals. Though they didn't speak much, a quiet understanding grew between them. They were both survivors, and in this small cabin for the moment, they found some peace. But as much as Yara tried to keep her distance, Alex could see that there was something troubling her. The quiet sadness that lingered in her eyes, the way she always seemed to be looking over her shoulder. It told him that she wasn't just hiding. She was running from something far more dangerous than she had let on. It was late one afternoon, when Alex decided it was time to ask her directly. He had been patient, giving her space, but now he felt it was necessary to know more. He needed to understand the woman who had trusted him enough to take refuge in his home. He found her sitting near the fire, Ilara asleep beside her fingers gently brushing through the child's hair. The glow of the flames cast soft shadows on her face, but Alex could see the exhaustion in her posture. It was as if she was constantly on alert, even when she appeared calm. Yara, Alex said softly, taking a seat across from her. You don't have to tell me everything, but I need to understand. What are you running from? Who are you hiding from? Yara's eyes flickered briefly toward him, then quickly dropped to the ground. She didn't answer right away. Alex could see the conflict in her face, the struggle between wanting to keep the past buried and needing to share it with someone. For a long moment, the only sound in the cabin was the crackling of the fire. Finally, Yara sighed deeply, her voice barely above a whisper. I never wanted to talk about it, she began, her tone heavy with pain. But I suppose it's time. She paused again, gathering her thoughts before she looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and resolve. My home, my planet. It was destroyed, Yara said, her voice shaking. Not by war, not by natural disaster, it was taken by the Empire. Alex felt a cold chill run down his spine at her words. The Empire. He had heard rumors, whispers of a ruthless force that controlled vast stretches of space, but he had never met anyone who had been directly affected by it. They came, she continued, her voice tight, and they took everything. They wiped out entire cities, killed my people, and took those who were left to use as slaves. She closed her eyes, as if trying to push away the memories, but they were too strong to ignore. Alex leaned forward, his heart aching for her. And you and your daughter, we ran, Yara whispered, a tear slipping down her cheek. We didn't have much choice. I was one of the few who escaped, but they've been looking for me ever since. For me and for Alara. She's special. They want her. Alex felt his stomach tighten. What do you mean? What's so special about her? Yara's gaze softened as she looked down at her daughter. Alara has abilities, things she doesn't even understand. When the Empire found out, they wanted to use her. They wanted to control her. Yara's voice broke, and Alex could see the pain in her eyes as she spoke of her daughter's fate. I couldn't let that happen, so I ran. I hid. But they're always searching. They won't stop until they find her. Alex's mind raced as he tried to make sense of her words. The Empire, a powerful force that controlled planets and enslaved people, was hunting them down. Yara's past wasn't just one of survival. It was a fight against an enemy that wouldn't rest until they had what they wanted. And that's why you've been so careful, Alex said quietly, trying to piece everything together. You're not just trying to survive. You're protecting her, protecting Alara. Yara nodded, wiping away the tear that had fallen down her cheek. I don't know how much longer I can keep her safe. They'll find us eventually. They always do. Alex's heart went out to her. He couldn't imagine what it must have been like to run, to have everything she knew ripped away from her. But now, with her daughter's safety at stake, he understood. Why she had kept her distance, why she hadn't trusted him fully. You don't have to do this alone, Alex said, his voice firm. You don't have to hide anymore. I'll help you. We'll figure out a way to protect Alara. Yara's eyes met his, and for the first time, Alex saw a glimmer of hope in her gaze. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it was there. You don't understand, she whispered. You don't know what they're capable of if they find us. Alex reached out and gently placed his hand on hers. I don't know everything, Yara, but I do know that I won't let anything happen to you or your daughter. You've already trusted me enough to come here, and I'm not going to turn my back on you now. Yara's lips parted, but no words came out. She seemed to be weighing his promise, her expression unreadable. Finally, after a long silence, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Thank you, she said, her voice filled with a mix of gratitude and fear. I don't know how to repay you, but thank you. Alex nodded, a sense of determination rising within him. He didn't know what the future held or how he would protect them, but he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going to let Yara and Ilara face this alone. The cabin, once a place of quiet solitude, had become a sanctuary, not just for survival, but for a chance at a new life. A life free from fear. A life that Yara and her daughter deserved. As the fire crackled softly, in the corner, Alex knew that whatever came next, he would stand by them, no matter what. The days grew longer, and the once quiet cabin began to feel more like a home. Alex continued his routine of gathering supplies, but now there was an added weight to his every step. Yara and Ilara had become a part of his life, their presence, slowly weaving into the fabric of his daily existence. Though the space was small, it felt fuller, warmer than it ever had before. Yara's cooking had become something Alex looked forward to. She wasn't just making food. She was making it with a care that spoke volumes. Every meal was prepared with love, and the smells that filled the cabin were comforting. They had become his new routine, a routine he was beginning to cherish. Alex had noticed that Yara, though still cautious and often distant, was starting to show small signs of opening up. There were moments when her eyes lingered on him longer than necessary, when she would smile faintly at his jokes, or when she would join him by the fire at night, sitting quietly beside him without saying a word. Ilara, too, had grown comfortable in the cabin. She still wasn't fully trusting of Alex, but the little girl would follow him around, her curious eyes watching his every move. Slowly, she started calling him Uncle, her voice soft and tentative. Alex's heart warmed every time she said it. It was one afternoon, as Alex returned from the forest with a fresh load of firewood, that he found something that had been absent before, Yara laughing. The sound was quiet at first, a soft, musical note that reached his ears as he opened the door. Inside, Ilara was sitting on the floor, holding a strange little object in her hands, something Alex hadn't seen before. Yara was standing nearby, shaking her head but smiling. It was the first time Alex had seen her truly smile, the weight of her troubles momentarily lifted. "What's going on here?" Alex asked with a grin, stepping inside. Yara glanced up, her smile fading into a more familiar, guarded expression, but there was still a hint of warmth in her eyes. "She's trying to figure out how to use my old communicator," she explained, pointing to Ilara, who was fiddling with the small, shiny device. Ilara looked up at him with wide eyes. "I want to talk to the stars, Uncle," she said, her voice full of excitement. Alex chuckled softly, setting down the firewood. "The stars, huh? That's a big goal for such a little communicator." Yara stepped forward and gently took the device from Ilara's hands. "It's broken," she said, her smile tinged with sadness. "I've kept it as a reminder of where we've been, but it's not good for much anymore." Alex watched her closely. She had always been so careful with her words, as though everything she said could reveal too much. But in that moment, with Ilara's innocent laughter filling the room, Alex saw a glimpse of something else in her. It wasn't just survival anymore. She was learning to live again, to find joy even in small moments. "Maybe we can fix it," Alex said, his tone casual. "I've got some spare parts lying around. Might take a bit of work, but we could try." Yara gave him a hesitant look, but her smile grew. "You think you can fix it?" "I'm not much of a tech guy," Alex admitted, "but I can give it a shot. It'll be fun to see if I can figure it out." Ilara's eyes lit up at the idea, and Yara, though still reserved, seemed to relax a little. She handed the device over to Alex, and the three of them gathered around the small table. As Alex worked, Yara and Ilara watched him, their presence more at ease than it had ever been before. While Alex fiddled with the parts, Yara spoke more than she had in days. She told him about the small things, the stories she used to tell Ilara, before things had gone wrong, about her home and the family she had lost. It wasn't a complete story, but it was the first time she had shared any of it with him. "I had a small house," she said softly, her eyes distant. "It wasn't much, but it was enough. We had our own garden. I used to cook meals like this for my sister. She loved it when I made stew." Alex paused, glancing up at her. Her voice had carried a sadness, a longing for something she could never have again. He wanted to say something comforting, but the words didn't come. Instead, he simply nodded and continued working on the communicator. By the time the evening came, Alex had managed to get the device working again, though it wasn't perfect. The screen flickered on, and Alara let out a delighted squeal. "It works!" she exclaimed, her face glowing with joy. Yara's eyes softened as she watched her daughter. "Thank you," she whispered to Alex, her voice sincere. "You've done more than just fix it." Alex shrugged, a slight grin on his face. "It's nothing. I'm just glad I could make her smile." Later that night, as the fire crackled in the hearth, the three of them sat together, a strange sense of peace settling over the cabin. Alex couldn't remember the last time he had felt this way, safe, content, and not alone. He looked at Yara, sitting next to him, her eyes still filled with the weight of her past, but also a flicker of hope. For the first time, Alex wasn't just seeing a woman in need of help. He was seeing someone who had survived against all odds, someone strong and resilient, someone who had been broken but was learning to heal. As they sat there, the warmth of the fire surrounding them, Alex realized that he wasn't just protecting them anymore. They were becoming part of his life, and for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was becoming part of theirs. Yara turned to him, her eyes meeting his with a soft, genuine smile. "You've given us more than just shelter," she said, quietly. "You've given us a chance." Alex nodded, feeling a warmth in his chest. "It's the least I could do." And for the first time, both of them believed it. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about living. And in that moment, in the quiet cabin, they were all learning what it meant to live again. The days had been peaceful in the cabin, but Alex could feel the tension growing with each passing moment. Yara and Alara had settled in, their presence now part of the routine, but there was an underlying sense of unease that Alex couldn't ignore. He had learned much about Yara's past, the empire that destroyed her home, the hunt for her and her daughter. But even now, with the small, quiet life they had built together, Alex knew that peace would not last forever. The uneasy feeling in his chest had grown stronger with every passing day. He could see the way Yara's eyes would dart nervously whenever she heard a noise outside. She was always listening, always watching, as if waiting for something to happen. Alex couldn't blame her. After everything she had been through, it was only natural for her to be on edge. One evening, as Alex returned from his routine hunt, he noticed something strange. The air felt different, thicker, as if the wind had shifted. He couldn't explain it, but something about the forest seemed off. His instincts told him that he wasn't alone. He paused, scanning the tree line, but saw nothing. Still, the feeling of being watched persisted. He quickened his pace and made his way back to the cabin. The sight of Yara standing near the window, her eyes scanning the distance, only confirmed his growing unease. Alara sat on the floor, playing with the small device Alex had fixed for her, her laughter filling the room. But the tension in the air was undeniable. "You feel it too, don't you?" Alex asked as he entered, setting down the firewood he had gathered. Yara turned to him, her face pale. "I do," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's them. They're close." Alex didn't need to ask who she meant. The mercenaries. The ones who had been hunting her and Alara for so long. He had seen the fear in her eyes every time she looked outside, every time she heard the wind blow through the trees. They were getting closer, and there was nothing Alex could do to stop it. He moved to the window and peered outside, his eyes searching the shadows. The trees were thick, the light fading fast as the sun set behind the distant hills. There was nothing there, no sign of movement, but that didn't mean they weren't out there. Yara had said they had ways of tracking her, ways of finding her no matter where she went. And now it seemed they were closing in. "We need to leave," Yara said suddenly, her voice shaking. "We can't stay here any longer. They'll find us." Alex turned to face her, his brow furrowing in concern. "We'll leave when we're ready." "We need a plan." Yara shook her head. "There is no time for a plan. They've been hunting us for too long. They won't stop until they have Alara." The urgency in her voice hit Alex like a punch to the gut. He had promised to protect them, but he didn't know how to protect them from something like this. The mercenaries were relentless, and he had no experience with the kind of danger they faced, but he couldn't let fear control him. "Not now." "We'll figure something out," Alex said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "We'll leave tonight. Pack what you can. We'll head to the mountains. It's too rugged for anyone to follow." Yara hesitated, her eyes filled with doubt. The mountains. It's a risk. But maybe it's our only chance. Alara, still unaware of the gravity of the situation, looked up at them, her big eyes full of innocence. "Are we going to see the stars, Uncle?" she asked, her voice soft and hopeful. Alex smiled at her, trying to ease the tension in the room. "Maybe, little one. We'll go somewhere safe, and you'll see all the stars you want." Yara gave him a grateful smile, but it was clear that she was still anxious. She moved quickly to gather their things, and Alex did the same. The cabin, once a place of refuge, now felt like a trap. They couldn't stay here any longer. The danger was too close. As they finished packing, the wind outside picked up, howling through the trees. Alex knew it was time. He gathered his blaster, checking it one last time before heading to the door. Yara and Alara followed, their bags slung over, their shoulders, their faces filled with both fear and determination. "I'll lead the way," Alex said, his voice steady. "Stay close, and we'll get through this. We'll make it." Yara nodded, her eyes never leaving the door as if she feared it would open at any moment. She had spent too many years running, too many years hiding, and she wasn't sure how much longer she could keep it up. But she wasn't alone now. She had Alex and Alara, and that gave her a glimmer of hope. They stepped out into the cold evening air, the moonlight casting long shadows across the forest floor. The cabin once, a safe haven, now felt like a distant memory. They moved quickly, staying in the cover of the trees, making their way toward the mountains in the distance. The further they went, the more Alex felt the weight of the situation. He could feel the eyes of the mercenaries on them, even if they weren't visible. The forest had grown eerily quiet, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves sent his heart racing. He knew they couldn't outrun the mercenaries forever. They needed to find a place to hide, a place to regroup. After hours of traveling, they reached the base of the mountains. The cold air bit at their skin, but the rugged terrain ahead offered them the cover they desperately needed. They found a small cave, hidden among the rocks, and huddled inside. The fire they managed to start cast a warm glow on their faces, but the danger still loomed over them. Yara sat down beside Alara, her arms wrapped protectively around the girl. She looked at Alex, her face filled with gratitude but also fear. "We've made it this far," Yara whispered. "But I don't know how much longer we can run." Alex looked out into the night, the darkness stretching out before them. He didn't have all the answers, but he knew one thing for sure. They would keep fighting. They would keep running, but they wouldn't stop. Not until they were free. The cave was cold, but the warmth from their small fire provided some comfort. The crackling of the flames was the only sound that filled the space, and Alex, Yara, and Alara sat close to the fire, their faces illuminated by its soft glow. Yara kept her eyes on the entrance of the cave, her posture tense. Every sound from the outside seemed to make her jump. She had been running for so long, hiding from the Empire and the mercenaries, and now, as they huddled together in the safety of the mountains, she could feel the weight of her past pressing down on her. She wanted to believe they were safe, but her instincts told her that it wouldn't last long. Ilara sat next to her, looking up at her mother with wide eyes. She didn't fully understand what was happening, but she could sense the danger. The little girl had grown quiet since they started their journey, her usual playfulness replaced with an uneasiness that seemed to match her mother's. Alex sat across from them, his mind racing. He had promised to protect them, but the path ahead was unclear. They had made it this far, but he knew the mercenaries wouldn't stop. They would continue searching for Yara and Alara, and Alex wasn't sure how long they could outrun them. "We need to come up with a new plan," Alex said, breaking the silence. "We can't keep running forever. We need to fight back, find a way to end this." Yara looked at him, her eyes filled with doubt. "We've been running for so long. I don't know if we can fight back. The Empire is powerful. They have resources, weapons, everything." Alex's gaze softened. "I know it's not easy, but we're not alone anymore. We have each other, and that means something. We can't give up." Yara didn't respond right away. She knew he was right. She had always been on her own, fighting for survival, but now, with Alex and Alara by her side, she felt something different. Hope. She hadn't allowed herself to feel it in years, but now, in this small cave, with the warmth of the fire and the safety of their hiding place, she realized that maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. "We'll need supplies," Alex continued, standing up and pacing. "We'll need more than just what we have now, and we'll need to find a way to get word out, maybe contact others who can help us." Yara nodded slowly. "There are places, people, who could help us, but they're far, and getting there won't be easy. We would need a ship." Alex thought for a moment. "We don't have a ship, but I know of a place. There's a small settlement not too far from here. It's not well known, and it's off the grid. They deal with things, people, that aren't easily found. They might have what we need." Yara's eyes narrowed, and she looked at him with caution. "And you trust them?" Alex nodded. "I've done business with them before. They're rough around the edges, but they know how to keep secrets." Yara hesitated, but then slowly stood up. "I don't want to risk it. We've already come this far, but if we go there, we might be putting everyone in more danger." "I understand," Alex said, his voice gentle. "But we need a way out. We can't just hide forever. The mercenaries are closing in, and we can't wait for them to find us. We need to act now." Yara was silent for a long moment, her eyes fixed on the ground. She wanted to protect Alara, to keep her safe, but she also knew that hiding forever wasn't the answer. She had been running from her past for too long, and it had taken too much from her. It was time to take control again, to fight back. "We'll go," she said finally, lifting her gaze to meet Alex's. "But we'll have to be careful. The settlement may not be as safe as you think. If the mercenaries are close, they could be looking for us there." Alex nodded. "We'll keep low. We'll get what we need and leave. Fast. No risks." Yara agreed, but there was still a heavy weight on her shoulders. The plan was risky, but it was their best shot. If they could get the supplies they needed and contact the right people, they might have a chance of finally escaping the Empire's reach. She couldn't allow herself to think of failure. Not now. That night, as the fire burned low, Yara and Alex discussed the plan in more detail. They would leave at first light, making their way through the mountains to the settlement. They would stay hidden, avoid any roads or trails, and keep to the trees. Alex had a route in mind, one he had used in the past to get in and out without being seen. Ilara, exhausted from the journey, had fallen asleep beside her mother. Yara gently brushed the hair from her daughter's face, a soft smile playing at her lips. In that moment, she knew she was doing the right thing. Ilara deserved a chance at a future that didn't involve hiding in fear. The next morning, they set out early. The sun had barely risen, and the cold air bit at their faces as they made their way down the rugged mountain path. The silence was broken only by the crunch of their footsteps on the frost-covered ground. Yara stayed close to Ilara, her hand firmly holding on to the girls as they moved quickly but quietly. Alex led the way, his eyes constantly scanning the surroundings. He knew they couldn't afford to be seen, not yet. They traveled for hours, the mountain trails winding through dense trees and over rocky ridges. Every now and then, Alex would stop and check their position, making sure they were still on course. Yara, though anxious, didn't question him. She trusted him, but she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. It was a feeling she had learned to live with, and now, it seemed, it was more real than ever. As they neared the settlement, Alex stopped and motioned for them to crouch low. "We're close," he whispered. "Just a little further." Yara nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. They were so close now, so close to finding the help they needed. But with every step, she could feel the weight of what was to come. The mercenaries were still out there, and they wouldn't stop until they had what they wanted. Alex turned to her. "We're almost there. Stay close. Stay quiet. We get in, get what we need, and get out. No risks." Yara gave him a sharp nod. She had made it this far. She wasn't going to stop now.